Welcome to another chat with Avid. Tis the season for gifts, and these are going to be three things that you should keep in mind if you are giving this season. I'm joined again by Jack Arnold. Jack, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
So I think it's inevitable. We just got through Thanksgiving, which is a time of giving thanks and blessings, if you will. Hopefully you got to spend some time with family and loved ones, even during COVID. I know it was difficult. Ours turned out to be a great Thanksgiving, given the circumstances. And now a lot's happening as we get into New Year's and Christmas and these idea of gifts. So we wanted to share some thoughts around that topic. And I guess let's kick it off with, when you hear gifts, I think we think of like the traditional gift, but this is more of giving, right? So what comes to mind, or what do you think is stemmed by the season of giving?
It's top of mind this time of year, obviously. There's obviously gift giving, Christmas being around the corner, but also this is a time of year where you'll get a lot of charities asking for assistance. A lot of times there is, even locally here, I'm sure wherever you're watching this, local food banks are giving out food. They're asking for donations. There's things like Toys for Tots. So this time of year tends to be, really the season of giving in so many different ways. So it's kind of a top of mind thing, and it usually comes up this time of year. Not to mention, we're going to get into this, obviously. As far as giving from a financial planning standpoint, there's always the tax implications of giving, and if it's an opportunity. And a lot of times, at the end of the years when you're doing tax planning, so are there ways to take advantage of that by giving as well? So, but I do think the first thing to talk about is, why even give in the first place. And obviously this is going to tie in with lots of other things that we talk about, but, kind of the purpose is first. What is the point of just giving? Because that'll inform how you do it, obviously.
Totally agree. Melissa and I, my wife, we just literally last night said, we should give back. We feel like it's, we're blessed to be where we're at and what we have, and we want to give that back in some sort of fashion to the community. And there's a number of ways to do that, whether it's a local charity, a big organization. So how do you, or what else could people do?
Well, if you decide that giving is something that you want to do, if the reason that you want to give is, like you mentioned, it's more of this is something that I want to do because I feel as though I'm fortunate, especially in a year like 2020, where, it's been a pretty crap year for so many different reasons, but, all in all, we've made out pretty well, all things considered, and we have a lot to be thankful for and a lot to be grateful for. Maybe it's time to share some of that good fortune with others. And if that's the purpose for the giving, there's a number of ways that you can go about doing that. So you can give to local charities. So I know around here, and like I said, I'm sure this is true anywhere that you're watching this, is there's a lot of local charities that don't necessarily have the marketing budgets and the names of some of the more national charities, but do a lot of really good things in your local community and have a lot more direct impact on those around you than maybe some of the bigger kind of national, more well-known charities. So I know, like around here, there's a good example is there's a community garden type deal where they obviously run a farm, but they grow vegetables and they grow food and they give it out to people. Really, it's all year, and they're always looking for people to help with the actual hard work of farming. And that's more of a giving of time than it is of giving money. So of course there's national ones too.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think, two good points. One, giving isn't always giving money. I think that's the first thing you think about. Definitely if you're in the finance field, it's like you mentioned earlier, taxes and those type of things. But a lot of people, I know my folks have given turkeys in the past. And so there's a number of ways to do that. I think some of it stems from, I want to give back. I think there's also an intrinsic value to the way it makes you feel. That saying like go givers as opposed to go getters. There's some cool books out there about even just that. So giving to local is maybe more of an impact as opposed to a big chain, or maybe that's your thing. It could be easier to give to Salvation Army or United Way or something like that. But like you said, a local impact, maybe that's something of interest to you. We can share some links on some local things. There's Pet Pals. The farmer thing's a great idea.
If you're looking for ways to give and you're not sure where to send the money, there's lots of websites that you can go to. There's GiveWell, which is, I suppose, more international giving. There's GuideStar, which I think has actually changed now the name. Can't remember the name of the new, but GuideStar was one. They used to rank charities, so lots of good information on charities in there. I know sometimes, rightfully so, people are worried about, well, if I give, how do I know that my money's being used properly? I don't really have a way to vet charities that I'm giving money to.
Right.
Even some of the bigger ones, there's been kind of scandals in the past, even about the Red Cross and things. What are they doing with this money? So if you're concerned about that, or you're just trying to do something a little bit more outside the norm, some of the bigger ones, the GuideStar is a good place to go. GiveWell is a good place to go. Effective Altruism is an organization that does a lot of making sure that the dollars have an impact. So that's a good place to visit. So that's effectivealtruism.org is one. Yeah, there's lots of information out there on how to give and give in a way that has impact. And there's people that take a lot of interest and put a lot of effort into making sure that actually happens. So you vet people yourself, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. One, there's skepticism behind giving to these big names. You mentioned there's been scandals in the newspaper before. There probably will be, I'm sure, in the future, unfortunately. But bang for the buck, do the research. I'll say my wife works for a nonprofit. They focus internationally primarily. And you could argue, right or wrong, it's not the local community if you gave that way. But a lot of times the dollar, if you're giving dollars, it does go further in underdeveloped countries. So, might be something to think of as well. Yeah. What about from a tactical standpoint? Being as financial planners, we also want to provide some sort of solutions, because there can be, for some people, tax benefits to giving. Not all, and I would say probably the majority. It's more about the feeling of giving that they receive or giving back, like we've said already. But what are some tax ways to give money, or to help out from a tax standpoint?
Well, I think the first thing that you'd have to do is, like we mentioned in the beginning, is to think about what is the purpose of why you're giving. Is it look, I just want to share the wealth and I've been incredibly fortunate and I just want to give money. And if there's ways that I can do it in a tax efficient way, then terrific. I would utilize that. Or is it I need the tax benefit first and foremost, but if I'm going to use the tax benefit, I'll give it to a charity if that's what it takes. There's no right or wrong either way, but there's obviously differences in how you're going to do it. There's ways, for instance, I think a good way to do it, and this is obviously a small sliver of the population, but if you do have an IRA that you're taking required minimum distributions from, you do have the ability to do what's called a QCD, or a qualified charitable donation, which is essentially you're taking money out of your IRA and you're giving it directly to a charitable organization. The reason that this can be helpful is when the 2018 tax law went into effect, there were some changes to the tax code, but in particular, it was the standard deduction went up quite a bit. So if you're really, especially if you're later in life and your house is paid down and you don't have a lot of itemized deductions, chances are you're going to use a standard deduction on your taxes. If you're doing that and you're giving money to charity, you're not getting any tax benefit per se from giving money to charity. So let's say you're taking RMDs, that money's coming out of your RMD. It's income that you have to pay tax on. It's tax as income. And then if you turn around and give it to the charity, which is great, but you don't get any tax benefit to doing that. One way to kind of end around that is by using this qualified charitable donation, which is a QCD, is you just take the money directly from the IRA and it goes directly to the charity. So it never really touches your hands. It's made out to the charity. And that way it never counts as income on your tax return because you never received it. So the charity gets, in effect, more money because you don't have to pay tax on it and then give it to it. And then all you're doing is cutting out the middleman, in this case it's yourself, and just giving the money directly to the charity anyways. the way that we've seen this work with some clients is, if, for instance, they're already giving money, like they're already doing this. It's already part of the budget. It's something they're already doing. We just take whatever that is and they say, well, I just want to keep doing the same amount or more, whatever it is. And we just utilize that as part of their R&D, typically is how we would do it. So it's very easy to do. If you're taking RMDs, it's a great strategy, especially if you don't need the money to live off of and you're already giving, especially, it's great. And it's super easy to do.
In essence, if I just use going to church as an example, because I think most people, if you've ever been into an establishment, they collect offering or a tithe. Mm-hmm. So physically I'd be putting in $10 or $50 or something, whatever I have, or maybe I'm like, oh crap, I don't have anything. But this is basically saying, as opposed to doing that and putting it into the bucket, you just have whatever institution holds your IRA, send the check monthly or annually or whenever directly to the nonprofit or the church in this example. And it's a win-win. They're getting kind of more of your money. You're still giving, and you're getting a potential tax deduction off of your income, right?
I mean, there's a limit. It's pretty high. It's $100,000, but there's lots of things you could do. Obviously, this depends on your personal situation, how much you need the money, how much is in your IRA. If you have $200,000 in your IRA, maybe that's a different amount. If you have $2 million in your IRA, maybe you could give a little bit more. And using church as an example, a lot of times they're fundraising for particular things, and you may want to, in a given year, say, I want to fund $25,000 towards the, whatever, the new basketball courts or something.
Yep.
You can do that. And the way that you would do it in a tax efficient way is take it out of your IRA, make it directly to the charity. And it's super easy to do, which is a great thing about it. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to do it. So that one's pretty good. That's probably the one we've used more frequently than any with clients, just because it's a simple thing to do and it doesn't take thousands of dollars. You could do $500 or something. So
right, it's pretty exactly. Good. What about donor funds?
Yes. There's I'm giving because I want to give, but then there's, like I said, the tax. I'm trying to utilize some kind of tax break for giving. When you get up to the point where you're giving for estate planning purposes, you're trying to get things out of your estate, maybe you're doing much larger dollar amounts. One strategy that you can use. So, for example, sometimes people want to go ahead, like here's a good example, actually. So now that you've got a higher standard deduction, a lot of times people, I guess, call bundling, but really all you're doing is you're taking all of your charitable deductions, say for 2 years, and you're just doing them all in 1 year. So you can get over that standard deduction and actually get the benefit of the tax deduction, the itemized deduction for a charitable gift, let's say. Mm-hmm. But let's say that that's a $50,000, let's say. And you say, well, I don't even really know where I would give this money. What you can do is you can establish what's called a donor advised fund, where you put the money into the fund. It's still in your control. Of course, it's not your money necessarily, but it is in a donor advised fund, and it just sits there, and you have the ability over time to give that money out. So you could say, okay, for 2021, let's say, I want to get a big deduction, whatever the case is, your personal situation. You put 50,000 in there, and then you say it just sits there. And then over the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, you can give the money out strategically to any charity that you would like to give it out to, for the most part. And you don't have to do it all in 1 year. So you don't have to say, I'm going to give 50,000 to one charity. Again, that's one of those things where you start to get bigger dollar amounts and you're doing it more strategically for tax planning purposes. Those are pretty good to use.
Right. Yeah. Great idea. And like you said, that's not everybody's case. I would say a lot of people even listening are probably more back to where we started this whole conversation, which was, I just want to give back. I want to have an impact. Right. That might not even be money. It might be time. It might be just helping wrap gifts. I did that 1 year, just helping wrap gifts for Christmas. So there's all sorts of things to do out there during the season. Any other thoughts as we wrap this up?
Not in particular. I would say it is certainly the season of giving. I myself have not been as consistent as I would like to giving time as much as I would like. I have done food banks before. I've worked around here. We have Metropolitan Ministries. I think that's a pretty big organization, but I know around here there's Metropolitan Ministries and they have a food bank. It's people come through and you give it. It was the best thing I've ever done. And I can't remember the exact day. It was either maybe it was Christmas Eve or it was Thanksgiving, but it was on a holiday. And it was awesome. It was so much fun. Everybody is so thankful that you're doing that. And it's great to help out. It's something that I would love to be more consistent about doing. Of course, I always tell myself I'm going to do this and do that. And I just haven't been as consistent. I like to be more consistent with it. It's a great feeling. So I would encourage anybody that's watching is to give. And a lot of times giving your time is the more fulfilling thing to do and maybe even more appreciated way to give. So.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree. And it's something you can control. You can control your time, you control where you give it. So, I think there's some hesitancy, as we mentioned before, with giving, let's say, monetarily somewhere and not really know who it's impacting or where it's going.
Yeah, right. Good point.
Well, thanks for joining us again for a quick chat with AVID. 'Tis the season of giving. We hope you all have a great giving season. Encourage you to get out there, give to others, give to strangers, give to loved ones, not because you want to, but because it helps make people feel good. Have a great day, man.
All right. See you.